Hey, I got a box of shirts and we're gonna go over how to make a quilt. And just to forewarn you, I don't know how to do this. I watched a YouTube video and I got bored out of my mind, so hopefully this one will be a little bit more interesting. But we're gonna see how it goes. We don't have any fancy cutting stuff. We have some pair of scissors, any kind of cardboard. We're just using this off a box. We're gonna cut it up into our different sizes. And a ruler to measure. That's what those are for. But we also separate our shirts into different piles. So we got our small logos, and we're doing all of these in measurements of 4. You can do 5. It all depends on how you're gonna cut your fabric. But 4 inches, so we're doing 4, and then 8 by 8, and then 12 by 12, and I think we have one that's maybe a 16 inch. So we've got 13 large shirts, and those are about 12 square feet. So we're doing that, and then we're dividing it by 2. I think that gives us about 78 inches. And if we did that on like a square quilt, we can do it that way. And then divide it by, clear 12. That gives us about 6.5 feet on each side. So 6.5 feet. And then we want a little bit of a border, but we'd also want it square, we want it rectangle. So if we take a foot and we move it down to the bottom, then it's like 5.5 by 7.5. And then, yeah, you can just kind of figure out. So really rough, but we're doing about a 6 foot by 8 foot blanket. I made a quick run to Joann's because we didn't have everything, and we got a few things here. This is glue paper, basically. It's called Insul something. Yeah. Anyways, you put this on the back of the shirt that you cut out, and there's a rough side that has the glue on it, and you iron that on. We'll show you that. This is the fabric that goes on the back side. So we're gonna have all of our shirts on the front, and then this will go on the back side. And then the batting, all the cushiony stuff that goes in the middle. Quilting needles, they're a little bit pointier to go in through thicker fabric. We've got our scissors and also some black thread. This is quilting thread, there is a difference, who knew? And yeah, let's get going. All right, we've got our sections cut out, and we cut out the middle so that when we lay it on top of the shirt, we can actually see the logo underneath and how much what's gonna fit. And it also gives us kind of an idea of how much extra on the side we're gonna have to sew it later to the other pieces of shirt. So we lay that out, we take the chalk, we're just kind of drawing some lines across, and then we're cutting out along those. Well, we haven't gotten too far, but we did find some things that make it easier. This is a fabric cutter. It's like a pizza roll cutter, but it just slices and dices right through it. It's a lot easier than trying to use the scissors. You can use scissors, but they just take a little bit longer. We don't really care too much about the edges because these are going to go together. And then we're going to sew them together face to face. And then when we open it up, you won't even see those edges anymore. So we don't care too much about super straight cuts. Also, we're finding that some of our things don't quite fit that 12 by 12, and we're just kind of figuring out what we can cut off and what we can, because we want to keep to that form. We don't want to go too much larger. We've got a few we're gonna have to adjust, but I think for most of these we can just get away with cutting off a little bit of the logo. We still know what it is. The last thing is that we noticed on some of the shirts, this one doesn't have it, there is a back to it. So I had to take the board and stick it inside the shirt and cut only the front off, because we might want to save the back and use it on a different part of the shirt, or we just didn't want to destroy it that much. Just to give you an update, we kind of cut out a bunch of pieces and laid them out. The big ones are 12 by 12, and these are 8 by 8. We decided not to go with any 4 by 4s because it just wouldn't cover enough space with the size of the blanket. This is 72 across by 90. That's what a twin blanket is supposed to be, but it's a lot larger than we imagined it would be. We got 6 yards of the glue paper, but as you can see, it's really only covering a little more than half. So we need to go get some more of that. So we've got, because I think it's 20 inches across, we got 6 yards. We're still just figuring all this out. So maybe another 6 and we should be good. All right, here it is in all its glory. Here we have 8x8s, 9 of them to fit 2 12x12s. And then we actually had a 12x16 and then an 8x12 just to make it all fit right. But now we've got to put on the glue paper. So we'll get the iron out and show you how to do all that. But when we take our logo, place it down, take the glue side, place it on top, take our other shirt, place it over, and then we'll iron that. And we'll hold it in spots and kind of go slow over each of it. We were told, hey, make sure you put this on the shirt before you cut it. Well, we didn't do it that way. So we're trying our best to get these cut as close to the edge as possible. And if it goes off a little bit, we're finding it's okay. It's not that big of a deal if it's not exact, because we're gonna tuck this under when we sew it. And if it does go off too much, then it just sticks to the board, and that's not that big of a deal because it pulls right off. If it's just a little bit, you're not ironing the whole piece on. Then we take our other shirt and we go over it. In our iron, we tried the low heat, but we actually had to move up to wool, which is just below cotton. So it's kind of a medium-high heat, and that seems to be working best for getting all the glue down onto the fabric. There. Should be pretty good, not peeling off. So then it holds itself out kind of a little bit. A little stiffer. All right, so we've got them all laid out. We have our 8 inches in the middle. We have this 12x16 one with an 8x12 to fit the same length of the two. You can see it's a little off there. And at the very top, we've got 3 4x12s stitched together to equal 1 12 block. So when I'm pinning, I'm taking the other shirt and laying it flat on top, face down. And the two main things I want to get is this corner and making sure this side lines up as best it can. These are not straight cuts at all. And then making sure the top lines up. Make sure you pin it in the fabric, not the interfacing. Interfacing will not hold it together. All right, so we got a 108-inch piece of cotton flannel so that we wouldn't have to piece it together with the 54 or the 48-inch pieces. It's all one piece. We don't have to bother with that. And we got 2.5 yards across. The batting underneath is 90 by 72. With the cotton flannel, it wouldn't stretch as much. And we know the shirts have already been washed, so they won't stretch. And there is different batting. Some said it would shrink up to 3 to 5%. This said it was already good, and it was kind of unclear, but we're hoping it doesn't shrink too much. So I know the middle of this is going to match up with the middle of that. Otherwise, you can see down there, they just middle. So try to match up there, start pinning from the middle and go out, and just leave the edges to curve under or stitch under whatever excess is left over. All right, so we got it all laid out, but we put this upside down, and then we try to center the batting on it as much as possible, and then we try to center the shirts on the batting as much as possible. So we had this measured out, but with the stitching and everything, we see we lose about 1 inch on either side. Then we took the excess we had and kind of rolled it over, and then we're going to pin and stitch right along the top here. On the sides, this is actually a little bit too long, so we're going to cut a little bit off, but we did the same thing. We just tucked under the corner, and I'll stitch that down, and it's good enough for me. Alright, we pinned the top part after we folded it over, pinned it down, and then we were able to pull it kind of down a little bit to stretch it, and we pinned the bottom part. Now we're going to cut half on each side off because it's a little bit too long, and then do the same thing. Fold it over, pin it down. So there's a back stitch, and it just, you start forward and then you go backwards and you go forward again. And it just gets you a good strong start. You do that by, well, locks it into place. Okay. I didn't know what it was. She said we should do it. I said okay. So that's the finished product. We got it all together, and it's actually really warm. We've tested it out, and it's pretty cozy. We did find out after using it, we haven't actually washed it yet, but there's a few spots in here where we may need to go back and stitch up a little bit by hand, and also just to keep it still in the middle, because it's stitched on the sides but not in the middle, so it's kind of wiggling around a little bit. Other than that, for someone who didn't know what they're doing, we got a nice blanket out of it. So, best of luck to you. If you did have any questions about it, put those in the comment section, and I'll try to answer them for you. All right?